Welcome to the first transfer tips video of the season as we head into Game Week 2 with a Friday deadline once again. There are two players who are being bought in droves, and that's why they are very close to rising in price. To be honest, going into the Wednesday, they should rise by 0.1 million in the case of De Kuiper to 4.6, and Sangare. Both of them delivered double-digit hauls, but are they worth buying for the upcoming match day? That's something I'll talk about in today's video. And 12 players overall. Usually in transfer tips, it will be 11, but I've added a bonus in there, especially after a chaotic game between Fulham and Chelsea, and there are several injury updates and things to think about in terms of should we sell a Cole Palmer or Elliot Anderson and these players who are yellow flagged going into the next deadline. Drop a like on this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell as we get ever closer towards 40,000 subscribers on YouTube. And check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Championships, for likes to my videos, proud to comments, amongst many other perks, my Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. And the same goes for FootMob, which you can download for free to keep track of all the stats, and you can see which players are doing really well from a fantasy Premier League perspective, and you can use the new feature for the fixture difficulty rating for UCL Fantasy, which has launched, and we've got the Champions League draw on the 27th of August. So once that happens, we can start building our teams and have a really strong idea of how to line up for match day 1. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. There's no better way to kick off than one of the best players throughout pre-season who got another assist, at least from a fantasy Premier League perspective, in Zolis. He also got 2 assists against Man City in the Community Shield, and his underlying stats are quite impressive, at least based on that one game against Coventry City where Arsenal won 3-0 in the Premier League opener. 3 key passes for the Greek international, 1 FPL assist. The XA was 0.14, so nothing particularly great. 0 big chance created, but he also had 4 shots. 2 of them were on target, 3 shots inside the box, which is also very encouraging. And I think he could get plenty of goals this season, but with Zolis, from what we've seen so far, he's probably going to get more assists than goals, but having that sort of combination and getting 15 to 20 goal contributions is a possibility, provided that Arsenal don't sign another top attacker, if you will, and especially someone who can play on the left-hand side. But as things stand, Zolis is definitely first choice, and he's not going to get 90 minutes. We saw that in Game Week 1, but I think 70 to 80 minutes is quite realistic in most match days, and he's going to start against Aston Villa and Chelsea at the moment, but things can change very quickly. We saw the signing of Konsa and reports by David Ornstein that he could get some minutes and even make his Premier League debut against his former club, and that puts Mosquera into doubt, despite the fact that he played very well. I think, obviously, something I discussed in my reaction stream was I believe Konsa could start straight away over Mosquera, but I have to say he played quite well in that game, and that's an opinion that I've sort of softened a little bit. And at the moment, I think Mosquera will start in Game Week 2, but keep your eyes peeled for a potential predicted lineups video like I did for the opening Game Week of the season. That could also work very well. So with Zolis, I can also break down his stats at Club Bruges last season in some different piece of content that I usually do throughout the summer, and I think the sort of idea I've got at the moment is to do it in the October international break when we have 3 weeks off from club football. And up until that point, I think Zolis is still a reliable FPL asset. He costs 6.5 million. He's not too far away from a price rise, obviously not as close as Sangare and De Kuiper, but after Aston Villa and Chelsea, it's Sunderland, Brighton and Leeds, so Arsenal will be near the top of the FDR from Game Week 4 onwards, and I think Zolis is worth buying for those that haven't gone there. His ownership is very high, so he's a template pick. I'd rather go for Zolis over the other Arsenal attackers, including Bukayo Saka. But what about Martin Odegaard, who is a massive differential, and it was a terrible finish, but he scored that 3rd goal, and Odegaard was another one who impressed throughout pre-season. But as I said before this campaign began, I'd still prefer Zolis in my FPL team. Another impressive debut was by Sangare, who got 2 FPL assists. I mean, one of them is an official one, the other not so much, but they all count in this game. And he also got defensive contributions with 13, and that's something that I highlighted throughout pre-season, and that's something that I will be delving into with his stats from the last campaign. Very impressive DEFCON per 90, which you can see with apps like FootBall, for example. The link is in that description. He got 14 FPL points, so over double what Zolis got, but you don't have to compare them. Why not have both of them in your FPL team? Because they're so cheap, and Sangare was a massive differential, but his ownership is soaring. It's now 5.4%, but before the Gameweek 1 deadline, it was basically half that, to be quite honest with you. It's Leeds away next, who were also quite solid in the 1-0 win against Nottingham Forest, but then it's Sunderland at home, who lost against Ipswich Town, followed by Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, and Aston Villa away. And in those difficult fixtures, I wouldn't expect Sangare to get goal contributions necessarily, but he can get defensive contributions and give you 4 to 5 points. I wouldn't expect clean sheets in those matches, to be fair, but I think Sangare will be very consistent, and some part of me does wish that I started the campaign with him, but it is what it is. I wouldn't expect too many goals from him. He had 1 shot against Tottenham, 1 shot on target, and also inside the box, but 0 big chances, 2 key passes, 1 big chance created, and the XA, expected assists, was 0.37, which is even higher than Christos Zolis. The XG was quite low though, much lower than Zolis, for example, at 0.07, but he got maximum bonus points, and I think he's got different avenues to FPL returns, mainly through defensive contributions, but he can get the odd goal or assist here and there, and let's see how he evolves throughout the season. But in terms of Brentford assets, I think Sangare is top of the lot, even though you had others like Coyote with massive returns. I'll be talking about that and ranking the Brentford options in general, but I think Sangare is quite comfortably the best Bees asset in FPL right now. There were many doubts about Brighton assets after that Thursday draw they had last week against Tromsø in the first leg of the Europa Conference League. That was just the day before the FPL deadline, and there was a quick turnaround between that match and the 4-0 win they had over Aston Villa, and the Kuiper didn't even feature in that 0-0 draw that I spoke about, but he did against Aston Villa. He started the game, got 77 minutes, and that was enough for a goal, an assist, 17 FPL points, and some incredible underlying numbers. Kadioglu is injured, and my predicted lineup had Kadioglu left back and the Kuiper a bit further forward, which we saw throughout pre-season, but because of that injury, you would have had some concerns about the Kuiper even starting so far up front, but he did, and I have to say, his numbers are comparable with some of the best forwards in the game, but it's one match. You can't judge too much based off that, and you might be thinking, why is he a purchase when he's about to face Chelsea away? My sort of answer is nuanced. It's not going to be a Gameweek 2 purchase. I would hold off from the Kuiper for now. If you got him, great. Maybe bench him. I mean, that's debatable in and of itself. Brighton, of course, went to Stamford Bridge last season and won, but I think the best time to buy the Kuiper is Gameweek 3 against Leeds at home, and obviously Coventry away looks like a plum fixture for the Seagulls, but then it's Arsenal at home and Sunderland away. So the fixtures are a bit mixed bag for Brighton, but for Gameweeks 3 and 4, they would be at the very top of the fixture difficulty rating, that's for sure. So as a short-term transfer, I think the Kuiper at 4.5, soon to be 4.6 million, is a great purchase. His ownership is 4.3%, but by the time this video is published, it will probably be over 5% overall. So in just 77 minutes, he had 4 shots, 1 on target, which was the goal, 3 shots inside the box, 2 big chances, and the XG was 1.4, and it doesn't stop there. 3 key passes, 0 big chance created, to be fair, but the XA was 0.18, so the expected goal involvements, XGI, was 1.58. No wonder he got maximum bonus points as well, and I think the Kuiper might be the best Brighton asset. I still like Pascal Gross, although he was a massive disappointment in that 4-0 win over Aston Villa. Verbruggen could be a solid 4.5 million goalkeeper, but the Kuiper is the more exciting pick, as we saw in Gameweek 1, and I think he's worth buying, but for Gameweek 3. In my opinion, Chelsea looking quite strong offensively throughout pre-season, and also in that 3-2 victory they had on Monday night over Fulham. So I wouldn't expect a clean sheet for Brighton this time round. They've got a decent record against the Blues, but I would expect a goal or 2 conceded at the very least, and that makes the likes of Palmer, Rodgers, and also Joao Pedro very enticing choices for that matchup there against the Seagulls. So that's something I'll discuss in future videos too, but you can have them at the same time, maybe not starting, and I don't like having clashes in the 11, but the Kuiper is definitely an astute buy for Gameweek 3 and beyond. It was a Cole Palmer masterclass, and Joao Pedro also matched him in terms of goals and assists with 1 apiece, but Palmer had the better performance, some fantastic dribbles and passages of play, and he had 5 shots in the game, so really promising numbers across the board in terms of creativity and goal threat. 13 FPL points. His ownership is relatively low for the quality of player we're talking about, but he is yellow flagged now. He was subbed off and he requested that change, but it was mainly due to cramp, as revealed by Xabi Alonso. Now, if we look at the underlying numbers in general from that one match, and by the way, he wasn't great throughout the summer, only 1 assist, and João Pedro was definitely the star when it came to those preseason friendlies, but Palmer had 2 shots on target, 4 inside the box, 1 big chance. The XGI was quite low at 0.45, but Palmer can be quite clinical when it's needed. And in terms of key passes, 3, 1 big chance created, and the XA itself was 0.21. The XG was only slightly higher there, but I think Palmer can get plenty of bonus points this season. The main problem people have with Palmer is you can invest in that Chelsea attack for 2 million cheaper with Morgan Rogers, or even better still, João Pedro up front, but having 2 of them is not a bad option, with the exception of Gameweek 3 against Arsenal away. But Chelsea have that quality. If any team were to cause Arsenal problems this season, apart from probably Man City, I think Chelsea would have a genuine debate there, especially with their front line. Their goalkeeper and defence is still quite weak in my opinion, and they have some problems in the midfield, but that front 3 is incredibly strong on paper, and if they can gel together as they did in that West London derby, I think Palmer can be a force to be reckoned with this season. And the only thing you'd probably want or need really is for him to stay fit, because he has been yellow flagged and he has missed so many games over the last couple of years, which is a shame. We all know the numbers he can produce when he has a full Premier League season, fit and available and starting virtually every single game. And the thing with Chelsea is they have no European football to contend with, and they can rotate in the earlier rounds of the Carabao Cup and when it comes around the FA Cup. So I think Palmer is going to do really well in this Premier League season. Just like Bukayo Saka, that's another one I've been quite bullish on. But over the next couple of game weeks, Chelsea still rank very highly in the FDR, despite facing arguably the best team in the Premier League very soon. But Palmer is worth holding on to. And if you do want to buy him, I don't mind it against Brighton. But in terms of timing, I think Gameweek 4 is the definitive best moment to buy Cole Palmer and other Chelsea assets. FPL is not just about points chasing or looking at who scored points last week and then just going for those players. It'd be too simple that way. And if you look at Mbeumo's stats, especially the XGI, it's higher than Cole Palmer's, but there are obviously some differences in the way Chelsea played on the day and also Manchester United. Mbeumo had chances but didn't really deliver against Hull City. It was the biggest shock of the weekend for sure, and we had plenty of those sprinkled throughout, but Mbeumo is still worth holding on to against Ipswich at home. The same goes for virtually any Man United asset. Maybe Dalot is a bit of a question mark. Will he start over Mazraoui? He certainly didn't in Gameweek 1, but Maguire, Luke Shaw, Lamens, I'd hold all of them. Bruno Fernandes, I mean, come on, that would be very reactionary if you take him out. We all know what he did in the last season. I know he had a poor World Cup, and also throughout the friendlies, he didn't really show too much. Unlike Bryan Mbeumo, who was the star from a Red Devil perspective, of course, he did nothing against Hull City in Gameweek 1, but 4 shots in the box is still very encouraging, and sometimes when you have strong underlying numbers like this, it does point towards future returns. It won't always be the case, but Mbeumo will likely get over 10 Premier League goals this season, maybe even 15 and above, and for Brentford, in his last campaign with them, he got up to 20 Premier League goals, but he is not the main penalty taker for United. That is Bruno Fernandes. Mbeumo is second in the pecking order, but 2 shots on target, 4 shots inside the box, 1 big chance, and the expected goals figure was 0.5, 1 key pass, the XA was 0.23 as well, so very similar to a few plays I've covered in today's video. The fixtures aren't amazing after Ipswich. It's Everton away, Man City at home, Fulham away, and Tottenham at home, but these are all teams that Mbeumo can do very well against, and as good as Man City, or I should say as well as Man City played against Bournemouth, and they deserve to win, they are quite vulnerable defensively, and we've seen that in plenty of games throughout the summer. But I think Mbeumo can do very well in all these matches coming up, and that includes Gameweek 2, where he's a captaincy option against Ipswich Town. Stay tuned for more FPL videos where I'll delve into the clean sheet odds and the top 10 captains for the upcoming deadline. We have another hold in Virgil van Dijk, who has solid fixtures over the next 4. Then it's Man City at home in Gameweek 6, which isn't particularly great, but Van Dijk is only owned by 19.6%, and I say that because he usually has very high ownership, but people aren't as bullish on that Liverpool defence this season, and I completely understand it. Van Dijk also cost 6.5 million. He had a relatively slow start in the previous campaign and then started scoring multiple goals, 6 onwards from January until the end of the season. But he got 11 defensive contributions against Newcastle in that 2-2 draw, 1 FPL point, and you've got Jacket, who looked very promising in that game. He only cost 5 million, for example. The 2 fullbacks as well might get a few attacking returns, but no one will score more goals in that Liverpool defence than Virgil van Dijk, and he'll be right up there when it comes to goal scoring alongside Gabriel. But Van Dijk won that debate last season when it comes to pure goal scoring and set piece threat. Obviously, Gabriel had the extra clean sheets and defensive contributions at times, but it's mainly bonus points where Gabriel ended up winning that battle, if you will. But he's 1.5 million cheaper than Gabriel. Then you've got all the other Arsenal defenders, Ezri Konsa coming in at 4.5 million and Calafiori at 5.5, Ben White as well. But I think Van Dijk isn't a sell against Nottingham Forest at home, Ipswich Town away, and Fulham at home. Then it becomes quite tough with Bournemouth away, who have a new manager, but they still showed promising signs against Man City. And when it comes to Van Dijk's numbers, 2 shots in that Premier League, opening game for Liverpool, 1 shot on target, 2 shots inside the box. The XG is 0.21. You're not going to get too much with creativity. Van Dijk virtually offered nothing there, but that is really encouraging there from an FPL perspective. I could see Van Dijk scoring in the next couple of games if Liverpool provide that set-piece threat from free kicks and corners as well. So I'd keep hold of Van Dijk and most Liverpool assets. That includes Alexander Isak up front, but it's also team dependent, because if you have no Arsenal defenders and Van Dijk is your easiest way of going there, that could make a lot of sense. But the Gunners are facing Aston Villa and Chelsea back-to-back, so I'd still rather have Van Dijk for game weeks 2 and 3. Florian Wirtz is someone I'd be more open to selling, maybe to Morgan Rogers or these other midfielders I've discussed like Zolis and Sangare, but it's all team dependent, and your strategy in terms of which chips you have and when you're going to use them will play a big part. Obviously, we've just had one game week. I use my bench boost, for example, but the free hit in game week 3 can be very popular, especially for non-Haaland owners. You've also got game week 4 as well as another window for the wild card even, but I'd be recommending game week 6 and beyond. If you want to see a dedicated chip strategy podcast, I'd be very happy to make one as well. And I talked about my chip strategy in the deadline stream too. But Van Dijk is a solid, dependable option. And I think Liverpool will still keep plenty of clean sheets this season. Not as many as they did when they won the Premier League under Arne Slot, but I think they will improve slightly compared to the last campaign, which might not be saying too much, but Van Dijk was still one of the best FPL defenders, and I think the same will ring true this season. One of the biggest underperformers in Game Week 1 was Igor Thiago, who missed a penalty in that incredible win over Tottenham Hotspur. Thiago had 2 shots, 2 inside the box, but none on target. The XG was 0.95 according to Fantasy Football Hub, but if you go to the Premier League website, it's exactly 1. And in terms of the assist threat, you're not going to get too much there. It was 0.08 when it came to expected assists, but that was still a very promising XGI number, and that's mainly because of the penalty he missed. He didn't really do too much apart from that, so it was a 0-pointer from Igor Thiago. He might as well not have played in Game Week 1, but I think he can do quite well over the next 5, including the games against Leeds away, Sunderland at home, Bournemouth away, Chelsea at home, and Aston Villa away, which might not be as difficult of a fixture this season as it would have been in the previous campaign. But Igor Thiago has 17.2% ownership. If you don't have Joao Pedro, I'd still be quite tempted to sell Igor Thiago to him. It's quite a boring transfer in the grand scheme of things, and apart from Joao Pedro and Haaland, I wouldn't be in a rush to sell Igor Thiago. Sure, you could downgrade him, if you will, go to a cheaper forward like Gonzalo Garcia, Calvert-Lewin, and all the others I've discussed throughout pre-season, and then spend extra money in the midfield and buy Cole Palmer. So that sort of thing can work quite well, but even against Leeds away, who look quite solid at the City ground, I think Brentford could score, and Igor Thiago is still a reliable option for the Bees up front. Is he going to be a one-season wonder? I wouldn't rule that out definitively, but despite the fact that I expect a drop-off in terms of his numbers, and I don't see him getting more than 20 Premier League goals, it's still a possibility, and I don't think he'll have, let's say, a horrible season and getting 5 goals or less. I think he'll still get double digits in terms of the goal scoring, not much in terms of assists, but you don't really need that from Igor Thiago. It just might be a bit of a difference in terms of the best Brentford asset, which last season, there were no doubts about it. Igor Thiago was comfortably ahead of the rest. But this season, we now have Sangare, who might offer the best value at 5.5 million in the midfield, and sheer consistency because of DEFCON. But Igor Thiago is worth holding on to, and I wouldn't be in a rush to sell him after that penalty miss against Tottenham Hotspur. You might be surprised to see me recommend holding a Tottenham player, but he didn't feature. Maybe that helps a little bit because they were dreadful in that game. In terms of the most transferred out this week, Pedro Porro is top, and you're going to see the most transferred in and out players at the end of this video. But Pedro Porro is worth holding on to. He had no minutes whatsoever in pre-season, which doesn't really help. Obviously, he went all the way to the World Cup final with Spain, and I think he's a bonus points machine when it comes to fixtures like Newcastle at home, who also showed a lot of signs of potential and maybe optimism for Newcastle fans when they drew to Liverpool. I think they could still rock up to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and cause an upset, but Spurs are still the favourites in that game, and they'll be very determined to bounce back, and I think the Spaniard will start at right back, and if he does, I know Archie Gray wasn't particularly bad on the day, but there is just a different level of attacking potential, set-piece threat that you get from Pedro Porro, who obviously hasn't featured, so I can't really judge him in terms of the Premier League. He had a decent World Cup overall. His ownership is 14.6%, but how will he do in this new-look Tottenham with Marcus Senesi, Van Heck, Robertson? Obviously, Kinski is now the established goalkeeper, and you've got more signings coming in like Savinho, or I think he wants to be called Savio from now on, and you've also got the likes of Marmoush, who is about to sign as well. But I think Tottenham will bounce back. And after Newcastle, it's Nottingham Forest away, Everton at home, Aston Villa at home, and Manchester United away. And Spurs have done quite well against the Red Devils in recent campaigns, and Pedro Porro has been a big part of that. He's yellow flagged, but I'd expect that to be cleared over the next couple of days. Will he move club? I mean, I haven't heard too many murmurings like we did with Christian Romero, for example, and obviously he went to Atletico Madrid, but I think Pedro Porro will stay at Tottenham and start in Gameweek 2, so he's worth holding on to. I wouldn't call him template per se, but he does have over 10% ownership, but it is dropping by the minute, and I still think he's going to deliver some decent goal-scoring potential, but mainly assists and the odd clean sheet over the next couple of weeks. There are fine margins in the transfer tips because we also have Ollie Watkins in the top 5 most transferred out, but he is a sell in this sort of definition, and Pedro Porro is a hold because there are huge question marks about Ollie Watkins' future, but according to reports, he apologised to the Aston Villa squad for missing training, and I believe he is in contention to play against Arsenal, which isn't really a surprise, his boyhood club, but there is a chance he leaves in the summer and goes to Al Hilal, who are heavily linked. Watkins didn't play whatsoever in pre-season after featuring in the World Cup, but Watkins, coming in at 8 million, was looking quite promising from an FPL perspective this season. He's also 7.5 in UCL Fantasy, but will he stay at Aston Villa? It's not looking too sure at the moment, but I'd be a bit more confident now after that report that I saw compared to a few days ago where it looked almost certain that he would be leaving the club. And if he does stay with the Villains, that would be a massive boost for them, and I could see him doing quite well against Hull City away, Nottingham Forest at home, Tottenham away, and Brentford at home. But that is the big question. Will he stay? And I want to see your thoughts down in the comment section below. But irrespective of that, there is too much uncertainty. You've got Joao Pedro at 7.5 million and also some great value in the forward line, at least on paper, with the likes of McBurney, dare I say, at least for Gameweek 2, but also Gonzalo Garcia, who has an excellent fixture run from Gameweek 6 to 8. He faces all 3 newly promoted clubs back-to-back, which I highlighted in my deadline stream as well. But Ollie Watkins is still solid, dependable, and can be one of the top goal scorers if he stays in the Premier League. I don't share the same optimism with Victor Gyökeres. He didn't play a single minute. He was on the bench against his former club, Coventry, and it's going to be Aston Villa and Chelsea back-to-back. Kai Havertz is the first-choice striker for Arsenal, and he has scored in back-to-back games, the 3-0 win over Man City in the Community Shield, and also the same scoreline against Coventry. But Gyökeres did score 1 goal in pre-season from the penalty spot against Borussia Dortmund, but he didn't play well in any of the matches there, and there are some rumours linking him to Barcelona and other clubs, and Arsenal are reportedly interested in Julian Alvarez, so we'll see if they sign that superstar up front. Obviously, Vinicius Jr. was heavily linked earlier in the summer, and that didn't go through, but Alvarez is still a possibility, and we could even see a sort of swap and then maybe some money involved. But Gyökeres is a prolific goal scorer. He's a great finisher. His all-round play leaves a lot to be desired at times, but he costs 7.5 million, and if he does stay in the Premier League and goes to another club, well, that's where he can become more interesting. But I don't see that happening. I think Gyökeres either stays at Arsenal or he goes to a different league entirely. I don't see him going to another rival per se, but to be quite honest with you, my opinion is that he will stay with the Gunners in general, and I don't see Alvarez really going there. But this could age horribly wrong, and not like wine, but instead like milk. So only time will tell with that one. But I think Gyökeres still has a lot to offer with the Gunners, and he could score plenty of goals over the next 5 game weeks, even off the bench. But he needs some minutes to actually make an impact. His ownership is 8.1%, and it is dropping because before game week 1, it was over 10%, and if he started that game, I'm very confident he would have scored and gotten some healthy returns there. And ultimately, I thought Arteta could have maybe done that in the end. I know Havertz was in my final predicted lineup, but it would have made sense to start Gyökeres and then have Havertz ready for the 2 more difficult fixtures on paper. He offers more in general with his hold-up play, but Gyökeres is a much better finisher than Kai Havertz in my opinion. But I'd be selling Victor Gyökeres. He's one of the only Arsenal players I'd be looking to offload very soon. With all the defenders, I'd definitely keep hold of them. Even Mosquera, although there are serious question marks about him starting at Villa Park with the arrival of Ezri Konsa. Bukayo Saka is looking quite sharp, and we saw that in the World Cup, in the meaningless third place playoff game, if you will, but also whenever he's played for Arsenal against Man City and also Coventry as well in recent weeks. But Zolis is definitely the standout attacker when it comes to value. Martin Odegaard is the differential route into that midfield, and I think with Arsenal, it's still that defence that needs to be prioritised over everything else. After an early substitution in that 2-1 victory over Bournemouth, Elliot Anderson delivered 2 FPL points and he made 6 defensive contributions. If he had played the full 90, it's possible he would have done enough to secure 2 additional points from DEFCON, but no goal contributions for him. His ownership is 7.1%, and it's slowly decreasing as we speak, but 62 minutes, 6 defensive contributions isn't too bad. He's averaging 1 every 10, you could say, but it's a very small sample size, and he delivered over 500 for Nottingham Forest in the entirety of last season. I don't see him reaching those numbers again, and ultimately Man City will dominate the ball much more than Nottingham Forest did, but he will still get over 200 easily, possibly over 300 as well, but I would expect a drop in his DEFCON numbers, and the same goes for bonus points, because at Man City, you've got so many candidates like Ryan Cherki, who got 2 assists, Antoine Semenyo, Erling Haaland, and several defenders as well who can pop up with goals. We saw that with Gvardiol and Mark Gay, for example. Anderson offered nothing in terms of goal threat. The XG was exactly 0 because he had 0 shots in general, but 1 key pass and 1 big chance created is looking quite decent, with the expected assist figure at 0.25, which is higher than several amazing creators that I covered in today's video. But Anderson will still get a few bonus points, plenty of DEFCON, but not to the level of last season. And what about his injury per se? I think he's fine, and the reports indicate that he is not injured. So Maresca said, yeah, I think it was cramp. That's why I said we still have 4 to 5 players that are not 100%, and he is one of them. I think Elliot was very good on the ball, off the ball, and I have a good feeling with Elliot that he's going to be better and better. For him, it's like pre-season. He arrived 10 days ago, so the feeling is he's going to be very good for this club in the future. So obviously, high praise there from Enzo Maresca. I think Anderson will be a decent FPL asset and a good signing for Man City, even though he cost over 100 million. This transfer market is certainly very inflated. In terms of their fixtures, it's Crystal Palace away, where I think Anderson will start, Coventry at home, Man United away, Sunderland at home, and Liverpool away. Oddly enough, in those 2 difficult fixtures on paper, in Game Weeks 4 and 6, that's where Anderson can get more FPL returns from DEFCON, and I'm not saying he's going to be allergic to them now and he's going to be terrible in FPL. Far from it, but I would sell him and go in a different direction. You've got Ndai and Dewsbury Hall, who both got goal contributions in that 2-0 win for Everton over Crystal Palace, and you've got Dominic Szoboszlai at a little bit more, and Zolis cost the exact same as Anderson, and he's far more exciting to own, even though he is owned by over a quarter of all FPL managers. But You're going to see my best wildcard squad, the midfielders I recommend, the shortlist for every single position, and I don't think Anderson makes the cut just yet. The same goes for the 12th and final player covered today in Coyote. He did incredibly well, scoring in that 3-0 win over Tottenham Hotspur, delivering 13 points in the process. The XGI was also 0.87, very strong numbers for a defender. His ownership is 5.1%. I wouldn't mind owning him for the next 3 game weeks. I think Brentford could keep 1 clean sheet there, and ultimately, football's unpredictable. I could say, on paper, I don't think Brentford keep a clean sheet against Leeds, Bournemouth, Chelsea, or Aston Villa, but look what happened in Game Week 1. Hull City beat Man United 2-0. Aston Villa lost 4-0 to Brighton, and sometimes you can get these predictions horribly wrong. So maybe Brentford end up doing better than I expect defensively, and Coyote gets more attacking returns, but I don't think he'll get even close to the 13 points he did in Game Week 1 against any of the opponents coming up. Sunderland is the most likely in Game Week 3 on paper, and maybe surprises in one of the other matches, but I'd rather buy a different option at 4.5 million, and maybe he even goes up in price to 4.6, especially if he returns in Game Week 2 at Ellen Road, but I don't think he will. That's my prediction, and maybe I'm way off the mark. With Brentford, I think the only one who did well last week that will probably continue to do well consistently is Sangare. That's the way I look at things. Obviously, Thiago is more of a hold for me, and I'd rather keep him in my squad for the next 3 weeks compared to Coyote, who already has the points in the bank. He had 4 shots, which is incredible for a defender. 1 shot on target and 4 inside the box. 1 big chance. And in terms of creativity, well, nothing. 0 big chances created, 0 key passes, and the XA is 0 as well. But he makes up for it with the goal threat he showed on the right-hand side. He got into some very advanced positions, and he also had a few chances, one with a header as well early in the game. I think Brentford could have a pretty decent season, and they usually start quite well, then drop off a little bit, and then sort of carry through to the end. Keith Andrews did a brilliant job in the previous campaign, and I think they can generally qualify or challenge for those European spots, particularly the Conference League and Europa, of course. But Coyote is not a bad option if you have him. I definitely lean towards holding instead of selling, but for those who haven't gone there, I think he's a skip for the time being, even though if there's ever a chance to buy him or a time to do so, I wouldn't do it in Game Week 5 against Chelsea, nor Game Week 6 at Villa Park. It probably would be now, but if I'm being quite honest with you, I'm not expecting much in terms of clean sheets or returns over the next 5 game weeks, with the exception of Game Week 3. The most transferred in players include the Kuiper and Sangare, who are very close to rising tonight. You also have Calafiori, Coyote, Odegaard, Joao Pedro, Zolis, Palmer, Szoboszlai, Gvardiol, Havertz, Rodgers, Cherki, Mark Gay, and Gakpo in the top 15. He's linked with a move to Man City, and he did extremely well with DEFCON and a goal against Newcastle. So Gakpo could be a better FPL option than we maybe give him credit for. In terms of the most transferred out, though, there's Pedro Porro, Konsa, Gyökeres, Gibbs-White, Watkins, Bruno Fernandes, Mbeumo, Van der Ven, Sarr, Elliot Anderson, Rice, Calvert-Lewin, and Antoine Semenyo. So an interesting top 15 there. I think some of them are certainly worth holding on to. It goes without saying Bruno Fernandes should not be sold before Ipswich Town at home. The same goes for Mbeumo, who was covered in today's video. Ezri Konsa is interesting. I'd be looking to buy him in, especially once we see him start over Mosquera, and there's even a chance he starts on the right-hand side, which he did for Aston Villa on several occasions. But as you can see, of course, a few of them like Pedro Porro, I also recommend holding on to for Game Week 2. Declan Rice, Calvert-Lewin, and Semenyo, it'd be the same thing. In fact, Semenyo ranks quite highly in my top 10 captaincy list, facing Crystal Palace away, who were quite poor defensively in Game Week 1 against Everton, and we have to be very careful not to be too reactionary and chase last week's points. That's a common mistake that many FPL managers make at the beginning of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found insightful, then drop a like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and also hit the notification bell so you're always up to date on my content, not just for FPL, but also UCL Fantasy. I'll be making content for that very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that, and the deadline stream on Friday, where I'll be answering hundreds of your questions. And the same goes for a reaction stream over the weekend if you want to see it. The team selection will be coming your way very soon, the best wildcard squad, and there could even be a predicted lineups throughout the October international break, when we have 3 weeks off and you don't know what you're going to do with your life, I could do multiple videos there, like the best goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders, forwards, players to avoid, budget picks, differentials, summer signings, and newly promoted clubs, delving into their stats from last season and ranking them in order in some of them, especially in terms of the best players per position. So if you want to see that, then show support to the channel and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the Champships. For likes to my videos, proud to comments, amongst my other perks, my Discord server, the FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. The same goes for FootMob, where you can keep track of all scores, results, and also the FDR for UCL Fantasy, which is going to be very helpful indeed in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll see you on Friday for the next deadline stream and also for much more content over the next couple of weeks.